warm welcome to all of you to start today's session in the day full of agenda. In next 15 to 20 minutes, what I want to give you all view on what is Infoblox's take on, this is not working? I heard. Am I audible in the back? Can I get a hands up? Okay, thank you so much. In 15 to 20 minutes of my presentation, I'll talk about a couple of things. One is why DNS has become this first choice of the adversaries. Why is it becoming so more important for all of us to also look at it from a strategic point of view? I'll share some insights. There is a company called Frost & Sullivan who recently did a research across Asia Pacific, and of course there is a large chunk of data that has come from India as well, mostly from the cybersecurity fraternity. More than 50% of the data come from the CISOs. And then I'll talk about what are the different areas in the infrastructure where DNS plays a key role, and conclude with a small overview about how Infoblox can help. So this research that was done by Frost & Sullivan did across multiple countries. More than 500 senior IT decision makers gave their feedback as to what do they believe, what do they think in terms of their priorities, what is their top of mind things that they are trying to derive out of the things that they have in the list. And of course, it is also important that this data comes from various segments, from the banking, manufacturing, IT, ITS, and also the retail industry. I'll also touch upon some of the data that was derived from the Cyber Risk Alliance resources. The first question that was asked is, what is the highest priority as a foundation to drive digital transformation strategy? Now, when we talk about digital transformation, it could mean different things for different organizations, right? But when you look at the numbers here, right, almost all the countries except India said cloud is the #1 priority. The percentage is highest for the cloud across the APAC, but India's priority is cybersecurity. And I remember back in the days when cloud started to become this big thing a few years ago, the first worry that we had was, it's somebody else's data center. Is my resources, I don't have the control of that. Is my data secure? Is my application secure? So that is the first worry that we had from the security perspective. And of course, what we see is the India number is the highest, from a 24% being the #1 priority, which means that while the cloud is the first thing that you want to drive, you cannot achieve the best outcome without considering security as part of the overall objective, right? And when you have so disparate systems connected with each other, you have on-premise, you have work from home, you have cloud, eventually you want to derive automation. That is because without automation, you're just adding another piece of a tool in the environment without achieving any tangible outcome. So all of things are connected. From India perspective, of course, almost everybody said the cybersecurity is the priority, and we'll touch upon these things in the next subsequent slides, right? When we look at the digital transformation, right? We all want to use cloud. We have hybrid clouds, we have public clouds, we use multi-cloud environments. One thing that also came out from yesterday's panel discussions and the conversation is the visibility of how the resources are getting utilized on the cloud is the #1 challenge. And it is the biggest enemy of the digital transformation. If you cannot see, you cannot manage. If you cannot manage, you cannot secure, right? So visibility is the #1 foundation stone for deriving the security outcome for the digital transformation. The next thing that we asked was, what are the primary functional areas that the organization is considering, right? And of course, cyber defense is up at the top with 68% of the respondents saying yes, the defense is the number one. But they also realize that the visibility of the resources across the board, right? Because the first thing that happens in scenarios such as work from home is we lose control, right? Users working from anywhere, it is very difficult to manage those resources outside. So if you cannot get the visibility of how the users are using the applications, what's the data that is being driven out, how your applications are getting access from the data center, it is very difficult to control as well as do the automation. Now when we talk about the visibility and we do the parlance as to how it is impacting some of the recent trends in the industry, we spoke about the importance of DNS yesterday, right? Some of you may have heard of it, but just like any other protocol, DNS is also going through a transformation, right? By default, you can see what is happening on the DNS because it's clear text. But last few years, the researchers and the developers have come out with a new approach which gives the control back to the end user as to how do they want to use the DNS, using the technologies such as DNS over TLS and DNS over HTTPS. Think of just how HTTPS is for HTTP, the DNS over HTTPS is for DNS. What that means is this is going to add another blind spot in the network, reduce visibility. You can't see what is happening across the DNS environment because eventually the network device has the control. Modern day browsers like Chrome and Firefox have this small flip a switch button which says, do you want to use secure DNS or do you want to use the default system DNS? And with DNS over TLS, the worst part is it bypasses your existing security controls. The moment any device in the network starts to use DNS over HTTPS, the communication is between that end system and an unauthorized open resolver outside on the internet. And it bypasses your core security stack as well because it is encrypted. And within that channel is all the communication, all the DNS transactions that are happening. Now look at it from the adversary's perspective. It gives them another opportunity to hide their activities. If they want to establish things like command and control or data exfiltration, even if you have deployed tools at a DNS layer or a firewall level to detect those activities, just because DNS over HTTPS is allowed in the network, you won't be able to see or monitor or control what is happening across the board. So that is the impact the development of the DNS protocol has on the networks today, right? The reason it is very complex to detect and monitor is because it uses standard HTTPS method of communication. So there is no way to differentiate whether the request is going to a google.com or it is going to a DOH destination because service providers like Google, they also offer DOH service. And there have been multiple instances of malware where the attackers have actually used Google's DNS to establish command and control. When we look at the entry and exit point across the digital platform that you've deployed, there are three main areas, right? There is email, there is web, and the DNS, right? There is also insider threat, of course. But if you look at these different protocols closely, DNS also touches email and web because without DNS, the email and web are useless. In fact, without DNS, the whole internet is useless. Nothing can be utilized, right? So from the digital platform perspective, DNS is the first protocol any system will need in order for it to establish communication anywhere. Now, from the security control standpoint, right, we want to have best of the tools and technology, so we deploy data security, application security, network security, and everything. But when we look at the threat channel, which is of course web and email, all those tools that you have deployed, they're able to give you the protection, which means that if an insider threat is trying to use these channels, you'll have these tools to be able to help you detect and take an action on it, right? But is there anybody looking at the DNS? Is there any tool in your environment that is monitoring the DNS traffic from a security standpoint? Is it giving you the visibility that you need to be able to see how the DNS traffic is being utilized across the board, on-premise, on the public cloud, and users working from home? Because you cannot see, you cannot monitor, so you cannot control and secure the DNS traffic. And that allows the adversaries to take an advantage, and more than 90% instances, 9 out of 10 malwares that are being written today or have been seen in the past 4 to 5 years, they all have a dependency of utilizing DNS at some point of their life cycle. Now, look at it from the defense perspective. If you're able to address the DNS piece from a visibility and security standpoint, what you're essentially doing is you're reducing the attack surface area. Because you've already covered web, you've already covered email, the only point that is pending in the network is the DNS. And DNS gives you the opportunity to reduce it by more than 90%. So that's the opportunity that we have. And of course, there are multiple reasons why bad guys want to leverage DNS. They also know that most of the tools that are utilized today in the network are not focused on the DNS. In fact, they are writing these malware codes. What they do is they try to establish communication across multiple layers. They'll try web, they'll try email, they'll try encrypted communication, they'll try DNS. And of course, if DNS is not being monitored or watched, it goes through. The question that we should ask ourselves is, when something goes wrong, do we really look at the DNS systems? Do we make sure that the DNS system is protected? Or do we isolate the DNS system? I remember there was a recent cyber attack that happened on one of the airline companies. Their DNS systems got compromised, the DNS systems itself. Their internal DNS, their recursive DNS, their authoritative DNS. Now, instead of that attacker trying to compromise their hundreds of applications, just because they compromised DNS, all that infrastructure did not work. Because there's a core dependency on the DNS for all your applications to work properly. From a security standpoint, what we are also looking at an equal emphasis is how we are able to leverage the overall ecosystem in a cohesive way, in a way that all the technologies are able to collaborate with each other. Because an individual technology is not good enough if it cannot talk to other component in your infrastructure, if it cannot share the intelligence with other systems in the network. And when you deploy tons of security tools, all of their intelligence collectively is much more effective than if they're working individually. Because look at a use case when one of your system is infected, right? And you have deployed a DNS security tool, you're monitoring the DNS traffic, and you're able to identify and block that communication, right? The opportunity that you have is that monitoring system which is helping you to detect and block that communication that is happening at the DNS level is also able to automatically integrate with all of your security tools. And that's a question that we should ask. Can the tool integrate with my next generation firewall so that it automatically creates those policies to not allow that system to go anywhere? Or talk to my network admission control to isolate that machines completely from the network. Or talk to my ITSM tool so that it can initiate those tickets and assign those tasks to this operations team automatically. So what we're looking at is a situation where the security does not only have to be protective in nature, where it is able to detect and block the malicious activity, but also at the same time, it is very important that it also helps the security team to respond to those threats in a faster way. Because otherwise, when you have tons of individual events and logs generated by those tools, you're actually creating more pressure, more workload on the security team, right? So that is an important task, which will help you to reduce the number of events that a security team has to look into, right? So if I have to summarize the few bullet points from a cybersecurity perspective and the importance of the DNS, it is imperative right now with the given data of 90% attacks utilizing DNS. If you cannot see, that 90% is you're missing. You cannot monitor, you cannot detect, you cannot block. And mostly because the cybersecurity tools today, they are reactive in nature. They're not dynamic. They're using static technology, right? But look at the DNS traffic, the number of transactions. You need beyond that. You need the power of artificial intelligence and machine learning to be able to give you that protection. And that is where you want the protection to be available everywhere, not just your on-premise. And it can only be delivered if the solution is cloud native, if the solution is also available in a hybrid approach, because you can then integrate with your on-premise ecosystem as well. And eventually helping you to reduce the total cost of ownership, because the tool is not only helping you to detect and block the malicious activity, but it is also helping you to get more ROI from your existing investment when the integrations, when the automations happen. If any of you have heard about Infoblox for the first time, we are a very small company, about 20 years old company in the business. We serve about 13,000 customers worldwide, 75% of the Fortune 500. In terms of the solutions that we have is the network visibility, asset discovery, protocol services like DNS and DHCP, and also providing the cybersecurity services using our cloud-native Bloxstone Threat Defense platform, as well as delivering those services on the branches, in the offices, using the Edge platform. So with that, I would like to conclude my presentation. Thank you so much.